what time it is. Are you still in your pajamas? Have you had your coffee? Can see from Cambodia, it's 1 p.m. It seems that South Africa is the earliest. We have India at 11:30, the US 2:30, Nigeria 8 a.m. Welcome, welcome everybody. I hope you're all psyched up for today. I hope you're all ready to learn. I hope you're all ready to hear from amazing, amazing speakers who are a great influence in the mental health space, and not only in their countries, but also globally, and that's why we've gotten it together. So welcome, welcome. We'll give some time. We'll give about, I'm seeing it's currently Kenyan time, it's 9:04. So we can give it probably another 3 minutes to allow people to join in, and then we can start the session. But also in the meantime, I would like to ask you, put in an emoji as well about how you're feeling today. Are you excited? Are you nervous? Are you ready to learn? What exactly is it that you're, path? What does that mean? I guess that means that you're very excited. That's good to hear. This is the first conference of this kind. It's the first conference that's being hosted by the youth of Global Mental Health Peer Networks. So honestly, personally, I'm really, really excited because I'm very, very passionate about the youth, about teen, about the youth, because I believe that if we start these conversations early, then when you have the mental health education early, you're able to, one, take care of your mental health. You're able to identify maybe if you're struggling with a condition. You're able to put in self-care strategies as well. It's very, very important to have self-care strategies, because people imagine that mental illness is for those people. They don't imagine that it can affect them. So it's very important to remember that your health matters, your health comes first. As they say, there's no health without mental health. So welcome, welcome. If you've just joined, this session is being recorded. Just be aware of that. So you can turn off your camera if you don't want to be seen, or you can always leave it on. You can also put in the comment section, which country are you logging in from, and what time it is there. What have you had for lunch? Is it a local meal? Let us know so that we can learn also local meals from each other. Are you still in your pajamas like people from South Africa? So where exactly are you logging in from? So just let us know the time, and we'll begin. We'll give it another 2 minutes. I'm seeing we are about 19. Welcome, Marceline, which is 7 a.m. That is down south. Harshita says she had I cannot even pronounce that.
It's idli, dosa, and chutney. It's basically an Indian breakfast, very standard South Indian breakfast. I'm not sure if it's still trending on people's Instagram, but it was trending on mine.
Okay. Actually, my favorite cuisine is actually Indian food. I love, love, love Indian food. So I look for that around, because around we have very many Indian restaurants in Kenya. So we have someone saying that they have had strong coffee, they're in pajamas that don't match ever. That's interesting. We have Grace Kemayo from Cameroon logging in. It's 7 a.m. in the morning. I hope you have your coffee or whatever it is you need to wake you up so that you can be alert for the session. Oh, there's someone who's saying that they have had lots of coffee and dog cuddles. That is so, so cute. Today morning, while I was speaking to one of the organizers, Sandra, I just woken up and my cat was all over me, and I'm like, I need to work, but the cat is all over me, but still appreciate the love. So I believe we can now go right into it. It's 9:08. We have 19 participants. Thank you for keeping time. Thank you so much for keeping time. And I'll just go right into introducing the session. This is an incredible session on mental health advocacy. And I'm so glad you're here because conversations like this matter more than ever. This event is organized by the Global Mental Health Peer Networks, a global platform that amplifies the voices of people with lived experience, ensuring that those directly impacted by mental health conditions have a voice in shaping policies, services, and research. They work globally to break stigma, influence decision-making, and create a world where lived experience is valued as expertise. I must say it is really an amazing team. I have worked with some of them for the past 4 years, 5 years, and I have really met very, very, very passionate people. So today's conference is unique because it is entirely organized by young people with lived experience and focuses on youth participation, an area on youth participation. The purpose of the event is to increase youth participation, lived experience advocacy, and enhance engagement from stakeholders, including researchers, policymakers, and peer workers on youth-related projects. This event brings together young advocates, professionals, and experts from global majority countries to foster collaboration, share insights, and drive action in mental health. It is important to note that young people play a crucial role in shaping mental health advocacy, from grassroots activism to global policy influence. The conference will bridge community-driven insights with broader mental health frameworks to create sustainable solutions. We will be equipping you, the participants, with tools, skills, and networks to amplify your impact. Welcome to an event that's not just about conversations, but about transformation. And who better to open this momentous gathering than a true global force in mental health advocacy, Charlene Sunkel. Charlene is not just the CEO of Global Mental Health Peer Networks, she is its founder, its heart, and its driving force. Since launching Global Mental Health Peer Networks in 2018, she has worked tirelessly to amplify the voices of those with lived experience, ensuring that they are not just heard, but truly valued in shaping mental health policies and interventions worldwide. Her impact is monumental. A global advocate for the rights of people with mental health conditions, Charlene has co-authored numerous papers from a lived experience perspective for leading international publications. Charlene would really love you to share those publications with us for us to have a look at them. But she's also editor-in-chief of PLOS Mental Health and has served as a commissioner in the Lancet Commission on Global Mental Health and Sustainable Development and the Lancet Commission on the Future of Psychiatry. Additionally, she has co-chaired the Lancet Commission on Edging Stigma and Discrimination in Mental Health and lends her expertise to various international boards and committees. Girl power, girl power. Charlene's influence extends beyond research. She has shaped policies at the highest levels, serving as a member of the South African Presidential Working Group on Disability and the Ministerial Advisory Committee on Mental Health. She also previously served as principal coordinator for the movement for global mental health. Her dedication has earned her prestigious awards, including the Swiss Foundation WHO Outstanding Achievement in the Field of Mental Health, the PADIS Humanitarian Prize in Mental Health, and a WPA Presidential Commendation. Young people, are you listening to these credentials, she is really, really, really a force. She is really someone to look up to. And I hope it will also challenge you to see the work that you can do in this area of mental health. But beyond the titles and the accolades, Charlene truly lives her advocacy with passion, purpose, and unwavering belief that real change happens when we stand together. But here is a fun fact about Charlene. When she's not shaping the future of mental health, you might find her diving into her 1,000 plus DVD collection. Gen Zs, do you know what a DVD is? Are you aware? If you're not, please Google it. Or getting her hands on with DIY projects. Or as well, deeper in thought watching documentaries and world news. Always learning, always growing. One thing I've come to realize about forces like Charlene is they are hungry to learn and they are hungry to grow. So let's create that culture. So without further ado, please join me in giving a powerful warm welcome to our incredible CEO, Charlene Sunkel. Please, you can do the clapping emoji, the reaction as she comes on. Charlene, over to you.
Thank you so much, Wariimi, for the kind words. And it's really wonderful to be here. And from the Global Mental Health Peer Network Global Office, I really extend a warm welcome to this conference. For me, it is really such a proud moment. You know, it's so rewarding to see our members and young people claim their autonomy, really leveraging their lived experience to actively create change. And even doing so, you know, going through past and present struggles, but never give up, but still continuing. So for me, this conference really signifies a strong team, and I'm sure you can see it here from what they pulled together and working together towards common goals. Now, I think we all know that in isolation, we cannot change the world. Working together is the way to do this. And that's important to take away. Throughout the 7 years of existence of the peer network, actually, in February, it was exactly 7 years that the peer network exists. We've seen people from really across the world, from all the world regions, becoming part of the GMHPN's journey. And together we evolved in an ever-changing mental health landscape. I've witnessed how people with lived experience become a powerhouse, really accelerating from being disempowered to being empowered and becoming really a force that influenced the discourse of mental health. So about 2 years ago, we recognized the undeniable fact, which Wariimi also mentioned, that young people are key to really create a future that we all envision. So young people's voices are and should be at the center of all decision-making platforms and discussion platforms and should be part of creating solutions. So we established the Young Agents for Change, which is this group that organized this conference as an avenue to really give people with lived experience, young people, the avenue to be part of solutions. I think that's extremely important. And just in closing, I don't want to talk too much. I'm still trying to wake up. But I think I said what's important. But I just want to say thank you so much, Path and Connie, for taking the lead from the Young Agents for Change, and also the team who really worked hard on making this event come to life. And I must say, I know they worked hard because I'm on the WhatsApp group they created. And in the morning when you open it up, you see many WhatsApp messages and conversations going as they're organizing this event. So thank you so much. And you really, really make us so very proud. And to everyone, thank you for joining and making the time from wherever you are in the world. I really hope you enjoy the conference. And I will be in the background following the conversations, but you'll also hear from me a bit later on. Thank you so much. And over to you, Wariimi.
Thank you, Charlene, for that amazing, remarkable opening. Things that I've picked is that in isolation, we can't change the world, but together we can make a huge difference. And in addition to that, you've also pointed out that young people should be part of creating solutions. And that is very, very true. So before we continue the program, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Wariimi Karingi, and I'll be your MC for the day. I'm the founder and executive director of Let's Go Mental Kenya, an organization dedicated to supporting teen girls through mental health awareness, education, and advocacy. I'm also a content creator, and I use social media to create mental health awareness. And I'm a cat mom of two totally different cats. One is a grumpy old man, and he's not old. And the other one is just this very jumpy, playful little cat who eats everything, including raw cabbage. I cannot leave anything on the counter. A fun fact about me, I recently swam in the longest river in Kenya. It's called Tana River. That was scary, but also quite exciting. I have been a member of GMHPN for close to 5 years now. And being part of this organization has given me the opportunity to contribute to global research, engage in peer support activities, and participate in mentorship programs. Through GMHPN, I have been able to amplify my voice and fulfill my purpose in the global mental health space, advocating for awareness, empowerment, and change. So before I introduce the keynote speaker, I would like to welcome you again to this youth conference. Thank you for taking the time to spend your Saturday with us. We really appreciate. Congratulations for opting to spend your Saturday learning from powerhouses, learning from just people who are experts in their field. I would like to mention that this session is being recorded. So if you're not comfortable with your face being seen, kindly turn off your camera. Otherwise, would love to see your beautiful, beautiful faces. So now we are going into our next segment where we'll have our keynote speaker. I'm beyond excited to introduce her, Dr. Harshita Umesh. She's a medical doctor, a global youth advocate, and a force to be reckoned with in climate and health. But before she was out changing the world, she had other priorities, like spending 3 straight years dressed as Simba from The Lion King. While other kids moved on from their favorite characters, she fully committed herself to The Lion King. That is what you call dedication. I think Harshita needs to share with us those photos for a laugh. She's fluent in 4 languages and understands 5, because why stop at only 4? She knew she wanted to be a doctor since she was 4, and let's just say she delivered. Congratulations, Harshita. Today, Dr. Umesh is the founder of VADA, driving global youth engagement, and leads strategic partnerships at the Billion Minds Institute. She represents youth at multiple UN conferences, advised at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, and is shaping the future of mental health and policy. She believes that every story deserves to be heard, that small actions create big change, and that having the right people around you can make life so much better. Let's give a huge, warm welcome to Dr. Harshita, a visionary, a change maker, and possibly the only doctor who has ever taken Hakuna Matata seriously. Welcome, Dr. Harshita. Please let's give her a round of applause. You can do the reaction, clapping hands, as she joins us.
Thank you, Wariimi. And yes, I dressed up as Simba, but I was a kid then and it was Halloween. And I would do that again instead of running around in a dress and wearing heels. Shoes for the win. But thank you so much for such a warm welcome. And good morning and good afternoon to everyone over here. Thank you for being here today. Whether you're joining us from India or another part of the world, your presence here signifies a shared commitment to mental health. And for that, I'm truly grateful. Today, I want to discuss an issue that affects each and every one of us in one form or another: our mental well being. Specifically, I want to talk about bridging grassroots advocacy and global mental health, and how through our collective efforts, we can begin to shift the global conversation and action around mental health. I'd like to begin by sharing my story with you. While it's quite personal, it has shaped the person I am today and informs the work I do. So before I begin, a trigger warning for the next 6 to 7 minutes. There will be mentions of abuse, depression, self harm, and suicide. I was 8 years old when we moved across the world. India was such a change from the life I used to live in the United States. But the biggest change was that I was no longer living with my parents and was suddenly thrown into a joint family and forced to shoulder more responsibilities than I believed I was prepared for. The first time that I was beaten up, I was sure it was my fault. I had been known to be difficult and I'd missed a couple of chores. But when it became a regular occurrence, I knew there was a problem. And when I asked, what could I possibly be doing wrong? I was told that I was the firstborn female child. As an 8 year old, I was completely dumbfounded and dumbstruck. I was sure I could not understand how my gender had anything to do with this, and how that could possibly justify the way I was being treated. But turns out there was a justification, because my paternal grandmother and aunts sat me down and explained that my responsibilities were to cook, clean, help with household chores, and to, above all and always, be subservient. As someone who'd grown up until then with my parents, who'd always encouraged my curious, inquisitive nature, and told me that being a girl was a superpower, you can imagine my confusion. So, of course, I called them and spoke to them, and definitely I demanded that they had to take me back. But that kind of made problems worse because my grandparents heard the whole conversation, and later my grandfather said, and I quote, that just because your father is paying us is the only reason you're living under my roof. You're a waste of resources, and you will always be. You will never be a part of this family. And with that, my world came tumbling down. I was alienated from my parents, and if allowed to speak to them, I had to be polite and pretend like everything was all right. And if I didn't, let's say I wasn't given food or clothes for the next couple of days, while also being constantly abused verbally, emotionally, and physically. By the time my parents realized what was happening and moved back, the damage was done. But as most children and a young person, I didn't have the language to describe what I was going through. I didn't even know that what I was experiencing wasn't normal. And it wasn't until later in life that I could fully comprehend how that abuse shaped my mental health. When I was in medical school, I was diagnosed with complex PTSD. My psychiatrist explained that this wasn't simply depression, but rather a deep, pervasive response to the childhood trauma I had endured. Suddenly, a lot more things made sense: my anxiety, my fear, the constant sense of being on edge, the emotional outbursts. But in understanding it, it didn't make my life any easier to live with. I still felt lost. I still felt misunderstood. I battled daily with thoughts of self harm and suicide. And I still felt like I didn't belong in this world. There were moments when it seemed too much, and I couldn't see a way out. I planned my suicide. But somewhere deep inside, I had a singular thought: if you knew then what you know now, would you have saved me? That thought stopped me in my tracks, and I realized that in order to get out of this darkness, I had to speak up. But there was a problem. I was afraid. Mental health, especially within the medical community, and what the irony of that, right, is still a taboo. I feared judgment, ridicule, and being labeled as weak and bullying. But I decided to give life one more chance, and I reached out and I spoke up. And while it wasn't easy, I found a network of people who supported me. These were people who didn't judge me for my vulnerabilities, but instead sat with me, listened to me, and encouraged me to seek help. They were the first to remind me that my diagnosis of PTSD is not a weakness. It is an illness that needs care and attention. As I began my journey of recovery, I found a calling, a desire to help others who were struggling in the same way. I started an Instagram page focused on mental health, sharing my experiences and creating a space for others to speak out. It wasn't easy to put myself out there, but by sharing my story, I not only helped myself heal, but I also created a space where others could feel less alone. Alongside the page, I started running psychological first aid workshops, practical, accessible support for those in need. These workshops gave me an outlet to educate others on how to recognize signs of distress and burnout, how to be there for those struggling, and how to foster empathy and understanding. And I started to realize that the more we talk about mental health, the more we dismantle the stigma that keeps so many people trapped in silence. But it didn't stop there. As my healing progressed, I began to see the connections between mental health and other global issues, particularly the climate crises. And I realized that they're deeply interconnected. Climate change and environmental destruction are not only ecological crises, they're also mental health crises. Communities at the forefront of the climate crises are the most impacted and are often left with feelings of hopelessness, trauma, and anxiety. We cannot address the future of our planet without acknowledging the mental toll it's taking on individuals and communities across the world. And today, as I look forward to the future, I've been fortunate to work on a global scale addressing mental health as it intersects with climate and gender justice. But no matter the scale of work, whether it's a local community or an international platform, the most important thing is that we create safe spaces. Safe spaces are where people feel comfortable enough to express themselves without fear of judgment or ridicule. Safe spaces are where we let people be vulnerable without the weight of stigma crushing their voices. Creating these spaces is not only essential for fostering an environment where people can feel seen, heard, and valued, regardless of their experiences or their journey, but also are essential for healing. It brings people together and allows us to understand that we're not alone in this journey. We're all connected through our shared human experience. Our struggles may be different, but they're part of a larger conversation about mental health that has to be heard. Now, the question is, how do we bridge this grassroots advocacy that we do every day with global mental health efforts? We start by continuing to break the silence. We continue to speak up, share our stories, and create more spaces where people feel comfortable being vulnerable. We create more platforms, both online and offline, where people can connect, support each other, and seek help. But we also need to work together. We need to build a culture of compassion and empathy, not just in our own communities, but across borders. Because mental health is a global issue and it demands a global response. We must advocate for mental health policies, raise awareness, and ensure that this care is accessible to all, regardless of geography, income, or background. I want you to close your eyes for a minute and imagine a world where seeking help for mental health is as normalized as seeking treatment for physical illness. A world where conversations about mental health are free from shame and stigma. A world where every person feels empowered to speak up, knowing that they will be met with understanding and not judgment. Now open your eyes and imagine that this is the world that we're building, because we are. And it's starting with us right here and right now. It starts with creating spaces like this one, where dialogue about mental health can thrive. It starts with each of us embracing our own vulnerabilities and encouraging others to do the same. So I leave you with this, a learning I had when I was invited. We are experts by our experiences, and it is time for us to speak up and recognize the strength in sharing our stories. We're no longer just a statistic to be shared. We should be in every room where mental health is discussed. It is time for us to be unapologetic and reclaim these spaces as our own. So whether you're struggling or healing, your voice and your story matters. Because together we can bridge the gap between grassroots advocacy and global mental health. And we're going to do this one conversation at a time. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much, Dr. Harshita. That was so, so powerful. It is so amazing to see that you have turned your pain into purpose. I mean, it's just a powerful story. You know, you decided to, as they say, the life served you lemon, you turned it into lemonade, and now you're healing people through that. Thank you so much for that. Before we go on, if there's anyone with any questions, you can either put them in the comment section, or you can always unmute and just ask any questions that you may have. In addition to the questions, we also would like to remind you that this session is being recorded, so please be cognizant of that. And I will hand over the Q&A section to Taylor. Taylor, over to you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Taylor. I am with the Global Mental Health Care Network in the United States. I have had the pleasure to work with Harshita these last several days with her questions based on her free and journey. Focus on different time, and there are any additional questions, feel free to put them as well. So to start off, as I'm sure most people on this call are aware.
Taylor, your audio is not very clear. So maybe we can try to sort that out.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes, it's better.
So to start off, as I'm sure most of the people on this call are aware, it can be very difficult to be actively present in this space, right? Given how low policy programs is, and that persons with lived experience are too often used this as a quota to be checked. But do you think more toward overcoming barriers in accessing these high-level spaces and what it means to meaningfully engage the community?
Thank you so much for your question. You're absolutely right. It is very hard to be very actively involved in these spaces and keep a check on your mental health at the same time. But I've found that strength really lies in solidarity, and that we've always had to really like break these barriers, because it's a norm there, that we're being used very tokenistically sometimes, or that we're just another checklist. So meaningful engagement for me includes that people with lived experiences are given an equal seat at the table. And when I say at all decision making processes, I mean also at all levels of decision making. It's not that we just come in to like review a report or something like that, but we're involved from the get-go, from the planning, the inception, all the way to the implementation and then the review process. But also, as you said, attending these high level spaces, they're called high level for a particular reason. And very often there's so many barriers. And I'm not even talking about the places where they're located, right? Like there's visa issues that already start, but also how much of funding really gets allocated to mental health. Like global funding itself for health right now has decreased. And mental health is like, people are like, people are dying, but mental health is not that important. So I feel like the only way that we can truly be meaningfully engaged is having conversations and constantly reminding people that, hey, we're not just a checkbox, we're not just a thing, but we're also somebody who needs to be taken quite seriously. And it begins with taking ourselves also quite seriously and understanding the power that we have within ourselves.
Thank you. That's a beautiful insight. And then you also highlighted the barriers that prevent people from seeking help. What are some actions that we can take both in our communities and on a global level to break down these barriers and make mental health support more accessible and normalized?
I think the first and the biggest barrier from what I've seen in my work as well is that people often don't realize that what's going on with them isn't normal. And they just think that, hey, this is something I deserve something that's happening to me. And nobody deserves to be treated horribly. Let's just face that. Everyone deserves to be met with kindness and support and understanding and free of judgment. And if you understand that there's something that's happening to you, the next thing is, how do you speak up about it? The language around mental health is so complex. There's so many clinical terminologies that come into place, and sometimes all you want to do is possibly just rant to someone or have someone who understands where you're coming from. It's not just about, hey, do I need to prescribe this person medicine, or do I just need to give this person therapy? It's much bigger than that. Say you cross that barrier and you reach the next one, you find out, hey, I do have an illness and I do want to seek therapy. Where do you go to therapy for? Who is someone who might truly understand how you're feeling and not judge you for it? Or can you even afford therapy in the first place? Like, even though I live in a tier 1 city, I've heard a lot of friends of mine tell me that no, therapy is way too expensive for me to afford, or these mental health medicines are way too much for me to afford. I can't do this. And now just imagine if you go to a tier 2 or a tier 3 city. But more importantly than all of that, we have to understand that our mental well being is like a systemic structure and a systemic issue. You cannot tell someone that, hey, don't be anxious for your future if you're not giving them basic food, basic water, basic shelter, and ensuring that they're safe in their own homes and societies. It's a systemic issue that has to be addressed in every single aspect and thing and manner. So I believe that it starts with us breaking barriers at multiple different places. But I also understand that we're human beings, so we possibly might be difficult for one person to do all of that, which is why it's so important that we work collectively and collaboratively, because the way I might be experiencing something is going to be so much more different to somebody else who's experiencing it, just given by the way society would treat us or looks at us and the access that we have and the privileges that we have.
Thank you so much. And I think we have time for one more question. So I'm actually going to go to one that was dropped in the chat. So this was Carly, and they were asking about the amounts of stigma in the medical profession, despite the nature of this profession, and wondering if you'd be able to speak more to why this might be the case.
Carly, I would say that if you also find out why that's the case, please tell me, because that's something I've been asking myself for at least the past couple of years. But I do believe that it's because of the way that we view mental health. It's still very clinical, it's still very colonized. It is very hard to actually tell a physician to care about your mental health when our own mental health is not really cared about. I mean, we work on very low pay. We don't get enough sleep. We're treated horribly as human beings itself. And I feel like the entire medical structure and system itself right now, there's just a general lack of understanding, empathy, and compassion. And then I feel like the subject also, it's like what work that psychiatrists do versus what work that clinical psychologists do versus work that trauma informed therapists do. It's all a little different, and it has to be distinguished, and that distinction is also not made to people who are seeking help and also to people who are providing care. So we're not also able to send people to the resources that might be able to really help them. But also, at the end of the day, when people look at this, the first thing I think people feel like prioritizing is a disease that can be very easily understood or attributed to a single aspect, right? Like, say I have a cough or a cold, I'm directly going to tell this person, hey, you probably just need to take like an antibiotic or an antiviral and you're going to feel much better. Or if but when it comes to mental health, it's so much more complex and so much more multifactorial. And a lot of times people can't comprehend how these many factors can really influence a person's well-being. So I feel like there's a lot of issues to unpack into that. And if, yeah, like seriously, if you do figure it out, please let me know, because it would help me as well.
Thank you so much. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Wariimi.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tyler, for taking us through that session. We really appreciate. Dr. Harshita, thank you so much. I probably just have one question for you. I'd like to know, how were you able to overcome the challenges that you experienced and overcome your mental health issues for you to end up being such a powerhouse?
Now you're being really kind. I do struggle on a lot of days, but for me, I think the biggest thing was that I was able to find a good support system. But this support system came with, as is usual with support systems or friend groups, its own trials and tribulations. It wasn't until much later that I found my right set of people. But I also have, like most other people, I've also been very lucky that I had like a mentor in this space. And for me, my role model was my mother, who actually stood really strong. While I was going through what I was going through, my mother actually got kicked out of the house with nothing but the clothes on her back right before I followed her. And even though she was earning a very minimal income at that point of time, she supported my brother and myself through our very formative years in our teenagers. And even though I was completely horrible to her, and now I realize how problematic I was, she stayed steadfast. She was like, I will provide as much of love and care as possible. And I really think that it's loving and caring that really changed me and helped me realize that that's the only thing I really wanted, for someone to truly understand and say, hey, it's okay, that you're feeling like this. And hey, it's all right, things will get better tomorrow. And she did this every single day for like 5 6 years. And even now, when it took me more years than that to completely get over everything, but even now she's been by my side, very supportive. And she said that, no matter what happens, you know that you have the power within you to create a better life, because if anyone can do it, it's yourself. I feel like that's something that we have to tell ourselves, because when the world is meeting us with so much of anger, with so much of hatred, we can't do that to ourselves too. And to really have to completely dig in so deep and say, hey, you know what? Today, yes, like there was this actually TEDx talk that I read where they said that all these different parts of you is probably like parts of people in a support group. And it's you have to learn how to meet all of them with not judgment and just understanding, and let them speak. And that is where true healing happens, when you meet each person with empathy and understanding. And I started to try to look at myself in that particular manner, that where each of my insecurities is something that just needs a little bit of tender loving care. And I feel like that kind of sort of made me whole again. I mean, I'll obviously probably always have some kind of a hole in me, but I feel like it's still a learning process, and every day I have to learn again, how do I navigate life and make stuff easier for me? And that's probably different for everyone else. But I would say tender loving care all the way.
Oh, wow. That is so, so beautiful. Bless your mom. She's such a darling. And I really wish you all the best in everything that you do in this space and in your life.
Thank you so
Thank
much. Very kind of you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome, welcome, welcome again. I hope you really picked a lot from Harshita's story. I think it's a very powerful and inspiring story. Again, I'll remind you, this session is being recorded. So if you're not comfortable with your face being shown, kindly turn off your camera. But if not, would love to see your lovely faces. Then you can also put any comments in the chat box. Any questions you might have, also put them in the chat box. And then we will address them as we go along. So we are now stepping into our next segment, which is the panel discussion. For this panel discussion, we were supposed to have 3 panelists, but they have dropped to 2. Sophie was not able to make it due to unavoidable circumstances, but it has also given us the opportunity to be able to hear more from the amazing people who we have lined up. So we are diving into an important conversation that speaks directly to the power of young people in shaping the world. Our panel discussion is on youth engagement movement, local to global. To explore this topic, we have an incredible panel of change makers who are not only leading conversations, but actively shaping the future of youth engagement. To start off with, we have our moderator for this segment, the beautiful Constance or Connie, who is a dedicated mental health advocate, researcher, and program leader committed to amplifying lived experiences and driving systemic change. With a background in psychology, she blends research, advocacy, and grassroots engagements to ensure mental health programs truly serve those in need. She has led conferences on youth leadership, policy change, and innovation, bringing diverse voices to the table. Passionate about integrating lived experience into advocacy, she works to make mental health solutions more inclusive and effective. Beyond her work, Constance values mindfulness, faith, and self-care as key pillars of well-being. She believes that true impact comes from balancing passion with purpose. I totally agree with that, and is always seeking new ways to create meaningful change in global mental health. Constance is actually from Kenya, or Connie. She's my country-mate, though we've never met. I hope we'll eventually get to meet, but she's the one who will be moderating our session today. And the panelists we have Suzanne Fox, the founder of Yellow Tulips, an organization that has been running for almost a decade, bringing a global perspective to mental health advocacy. She has spent 35 years immersing herself in Chinese history, either living in China or teaching it in the US. This is so interesting, and is fluent in Mandarin Chinese. When she's not advocating for mental health, you might find her biking through different parts of the world. In fact, she recently completed a cycling journey from Kerala to Goa. Susan, I was supposed to Google the distance, but I didn't get to. So you will please let us know how many kilometers or how many miles you cycled. Susan is passionate about ensuring this conversation leads to action, which is the mental health conversation. She hopes that through this conference, we will walk away with clear steps on how to better support youth mental health and create a space where we can all continue learning from one another. Our second panelist is John Mwangi, another fellow Kenyan, standing tall at 6'1". John Mwangi is not only a towering figure, but also a powerful voice in mental health advocacy. As the founder and CEO of PDRO Kenya and the Lived Experience Advocacy Network, John uses his personal journey to challenge stigma and drive meaningful change in mental health spaces. He firmly believes that our stories have the power to transform systems and shift mindsets. His message for today: when you own your story and share it with purpose, you become an unstoppable force for change. John is a Yali alumni, an Inside Out Award UK finalist for his work in mental well-being in the workplace, a Nguvu Collective Fellow. Nguvu is a Swahili word meaning strength. Collective Fellow, a GEDDA Fellow, an LPA Certified Coach, and a PFP Fellow for 2025. Wow. As I told you, that we have such amazing panelists. So please give a round of applause for Connie, for Susan, for John. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Wariimi, for the lovely welcome. So, good morning, everyone from whatever time zone you are in, different parts of the world. Just like Wariimi said, unfortunately, Sophia will not be able to join us today due to a family emergency, and we send her our best wishes and hope to have her with us in the future. So in her absence, we are having our remaining speakers, and we will have additional time to delve deeper into their insights. So we look forward to a rich and an engaging session. And also just a quick note or a reminder that this session is being recorded, and if you're not comfortable with having your face on camera, please feel free to turn it off, but if you're okay with it, that's perfectly fine too. Thank you so much to our speakers for their insightful presentations. We'll now move into the moderated Q&A session where we'll explore some key themes in more depth. I'll start with a few questions to guide the discussion, and then we'll open the floor for audience participation. So we will begin. I will have my first question to Suzanne. How can grassroots movements collaborate with global organizations while maintaining their cultural relevance and autonomy?
Sure. So first of all, what an incredible honor to be part of this just beautiful conversation. And that keynote was so personal and beautiful. And I 100% believe, I think everyone in this space agrees that there's power in numbers and nobody can do this work by themselves. So I'm so honored to be invited to participate. I so look forward to connecting with people here, and just, it's all about sharing ideas and sharing how can we work together. So I'm young at heart, but I wish my daughter, who I co-founded the Yellow Tulip Project, was able to join us. I am so honored and inspired to be surrounded by young people who care and are using their voices to make a difference. There's a lot of talk about youth voices mattering, but oftentimes, where are they? Where are their voices? Why are they not included? So our team, I'm the older person on the team. It's all people under 30, and they are truly making a difference, and they're bold and they're loud and they want their voices to be heard. And it's such an honor for me to learn from them. So I just wanted to say that we are a grassroots organization. We started in Portland, Maine. The Yellow Tulip Project is all about hope, community, and smashing the stigma around mental health. And it started 9 years ago, just me and my daughter, after she had experienced terrible suicide loss of her two best friends, struggling alone with her own self-harm and depression and suicidal thoughts. And we had this mother-daughter duo in a deep, dark place of sadness and grief, and a need to do something. And so we did. We looked at the yellow tulip as the flower of hope, and the simple act of coming together and planting a garden during Mental Health Awareness Week. Simple, 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 but it brought people together. We're going to hear more about storytelling from John, but sharing a story, music, poetry, just created a safe space. So I think a lot of grassroots organizations, what the beauty of a grassroots organization is that we're small. We've got energy and passion. We don't have big boards and big layers of bureaucracy. You have an idea and we make it happen. Let's tackle stigma. Let's start a storytelling class. We wanted to do this. Let's do this. So in some ways it's really energizing, but we don't have a big team and the resources often to show your data, get the impact, some of the things that are harder for smaller grassroots organizations. So in my mind, the secret to our success has been always collaborating with organizations that, like who we are, see that we do something that's different or innovative or fresh, but it makes sense to collaborate with a bigger organization. So I definitely feel that it has to be done really thoughtfully, because the grassroots organization, you don't want to lose your special sauce. You don't want to be taken over by a bigger organization. And yet there's so much value in working together. For example, in the United States where I live, we work regularly with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. They're a big national organization, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI, huge national organization, offices in every state, huge national offices in Washington, DC. But they don't have the army of young people and change makers that are doing all this stuff on the ground. We have that. and they have the national setup. So I think finding ways to collaborate with the bigger organizations, it's such a win-win for the smaller grassroots organization because their message can get heard in other places. And working with a bigger organization, they get the energy of the smaller organizations that are just more maybe fired up and ready to make a difference.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. We'll go straight to John. What role does storytelling play in shaping mental health advocacy and breaking stigma at both local and global levels?
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. I've enjoyed the conversation, and especially from the keynote speaker sharing her story, which is so important to me because as a storytelling coach, I know the science behind storytelling. And the reason why storytelling is also very important in shaping both global and local mental health initiatives. One is because mental health advocacy creates, when you're sharing your story, creates more accessibility and inclusion, because people of diverse background without even any formal experience can able to share their stories and by that virtue and also participate in driving the advocacy forum, then they become part of the movement. So it creates that a lot of inclusivity as everyone is able to participate in the advocacy journey. Then the other thing is storytelling. It's able to humanize the mental health information, because most often you find people sharing facts and statistics, but when people in lived experience are able to share their personal stories, it makes people to relate with them more relatable way. And when we are sharing our personal struggles, our personal challenges and triumph, it's able to challenge the stereotypes that exist in the mental sector. And by that sense, it makes this information or mental health to become like a distant problem or a distant issue, and it's able to foster great understanding and acceptance in the society. Then storytelling is one of the most persuasive form of communication. By the virtue that we all possess our brains, we possess a brain. We are possession of an organ in our body that has had a lot of years of evolution that understand and interprets the world around us in terms of stories. That's the reason why when you wake up in the morning, you tend to share how your dream was. You tend to share when something happens to you, you share that this happened and this followed. So we tend to imparate our world in terms of storytelling. And by that virtue in itself, and because when sharing our stories, one way is that it creates, apart from the physical responses such as laughter, smiles, and tears, it also creates a lot of psychological emotions. And these psychological emotions tend to build a lot of trust and empathy, and and social connectedness. So by this virtue, when people are sharing their stories and they feel this emotional response, then they're more likely to take action because of that social connectedness. That's why storytelling becomes so powerful in shaping both local and international advocacy movements. Yeah.
Can I just add, Connie, can I just add one comment to what John just said? Is that okay? Yep.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, sure. Yeah, John, well, what we just heard in the keynote speech, it was so personal and honest, and it resonated so beautifully. And our experience when my daughter was 16 years old, and this was a year after she lost her best friend to suicide, and she gave a TED Talk. And she stood on a stage and she shared her story. It was raw, it was honest, it was hard, it was beautiful, powerful. And then she gave it again to a youth TED Talk, youth TEDx. and all the young people sitting in that auditorium, because mental health and mental illness is barely talked about in the health curriculum in the United States, maybe one day during Health Week. And my daughter is saying, I suffer from depression, we need to talk about it. And that made such an impact, and the ripple effect of how it touches people's lives when they share their truth. So I love what you're doing, and that is so powerful and so needed.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. And I totally agree. When people share their lived experiences, it really shifts mental health from just being a clinical or a policy discussion to something that's really personal and very much relatable. And I think in advocacy, it's so important to center storytelling around dignity and consent and also responsible training. So thank you, Dan. So we'll go straight to Suzanne. How has public art, including photography and other creative forms, played a role in your efforts to destigmatize mental health? And what impact have you seen from this initiative?
Yeah, sure. No, thank you so much. I think it's sort of back to storytelling. After my daughter lost her first best friend to suicide, the principal of her school 2 days later said, now that everything's back to normal. And we were all like, wait, what is normal about what just happened when a beautiful 16-year-old young woman takes her life? There's nothing normal about that. So we wanted to do something big and loud and public so that people could take this topic that everyone needs to talk about, but no one really wants to talk about. So how can we make it safe and hopeful and connected? So we started with a garden space, as I mentioned before, but coming together to get your hands dirty, plant a garden. And in that space, there's poetry, there's music, there's wellness activities, there's storytelling, and people feel less alone. So we started doing the gardens. We plant during Mental Health Awareness Week. The tulips come up in where I live in May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month. Okay, but what else can we do to tackle stigma? Because the gardens are nice. And then we've shifted over to photography. And we've created these huge, beautiful public art photography exhibits. One is called I Am More Facing Stigma. And the photo exhibit are beautiful, black and white, powerful photographs. And each model has 6 I am statements. So my daughter, for example, I am Julia, I am hopeful, I am a bass player, I am battling depression, I am a Little Prince devotee. So each model has their statements that I have depression, but depression doesn't have me. And it's challenging perceptions of what mental illness, quote unquote, looks like. And the exhibit, because you can't see mental illness, you don't know what people are going through. So it's been so beautiful to have these photo exhibits travel to community centers, to schools, to airports. They are such a big public way of addressing this topic. And so we did this with the stigma. And then the second thing we did was, okay, we have all these amazing young people who are getting involved in our momentum, these powerful young change makers. And at this point, I think we have like 700 youth ambassadors, but almost like 695 are all young women. Where are the young men? And what can we do to bring young men into these conversations? So we created a second photo exhibit called Young Men Moving Mountains. And it's a beautiful, powerful also exhibit that showcases young men sharing their story and their truth. So if you're an awkward 13-year-old boy and you see these beautiful photographs at an airport, or if you see these beautiful photo exhibit in a community center at a hospital or in your school, it just makes you feel less alone. And wow. And then back to the storytelling piece, we've now added QR codes to all the photos so that when you not only see the photographs, but you can listen to their stories. So I just feel that it's an innovative and public way of addressing this topic.
Thank you so much. When you said that you had this thing where people were having it captioned that depression is like you depicting it in terms of people living with mental health conditions are real people rather than just patients and not victims. And I think that really stuck with me. And I think this is one of the best ways that people are using art to advocate for mental health. So yeah, thank you. We'll go to John. What are some common barriers youth face when advocating for mental health in their communities, and how can they be addressed?
Yeah, sure. One, I'll speak from a point of people who want to start their advocacy through sharing their personal stories. So one of the common barrier most of us have is actually thinking about my story is not worth sharing. What part of my story should I share? What will people see or think about my story? So all of us, most people who actually share their story, we all experience that phase of having question ourselves in terms of navigating this phase of moving from silence to public. So that is a common barrier when people who are starting to share their story, everyone goes through, but it is entirely different for everyone. But one way you can able to navigate that is actually acknowledging that that phase is a phase that everyone goes through, no matter the people who you see who are sharing their story you see them as an expert in sharing their stories. They all have undergone that phase in terms of their storytelling journey. And also be patient about yourself and choosing to share the part of your story that you actually heal from and which you've not actually healed from. Let it remain within your support system, because you may lose control of that part of the story when it goes to the public. The other part of the common barrier is actually you find the stigma that is associated with mental health in the society. So that may be based on context of where you're coming from. The stigma may be different, but how it affects us, all of us, is actually what is common. So one way you actually need to understand that we all of us come from a point of ignorance. Because I remember even me myself, before I got a mental condition of depression, I used to call people with mental health condition these labels we actually see that these labels that exist. But little did I know that actually I'm contributing to stigma, until a point when I actually got my mental health diagnosis and actually came to realize actually what I was doing, I was actually hurting others. So you should understand that other people are coming from a point of ignorance. And by the virtue that they're coming from a point of ignorance, choose not to affect you, because you understand them, they're coming from a point of ignorance. So what you try to do is actually try to educate the person to understand what they're doing is actually contributing to stigma. But if they choose not to change their behavior or how they're acting for, remember that the issue is not you, the issue is them. They're the ones who have that mental block. It's not you. And let it not affect you. Then the other thing is actually lack of knowledge and resources that exist. Sometimes you want to start a grassroots initiative and you think that you need to have a lot of resources to be able to start this initiative. No, you only use what you have. You heard Wariimi said that she uses content creation in social media. Use social media to start small, advocate small, and be consistent and patient. What matters, and I think most of us when you're doing advocacy, we have this aspect of thinking that we want to solve all the issues that exist in the mental health sector. You want to do the most in everything. But remember that you're not also like a savior, that you're able to do everything. You're also human and you also have limits to what you're capable of doing. So choose to do what you're able to do within your capacity, and what matters is consistently. And it does not matter how many lives you touch. What is most important is that one life that you're able to touch and change their lives. That is what is most important.
Yeah. And I totally agree with you there that you have to start somewhere and start small and stay clear on you can't change everything, but you got to try to do what is the one thing? What is the one thing we can do? And I think that that resonated with me.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question for John. So in countries, especially in LMICs, like here in Kenya, mental health is a topic that is turned away or people are not willing to talk about it. And in the current era, we are in that space where people are making fun of mental health illnesses, or people who are openly talking about their experiences are referred as crazy or vulnerable or weak. So my question is, how would you advise, especially young people, when they really want to come out about their experiences so that they can be empowered, or to just be open about their struggles as persons with lived experience?
One point is one previously that I've commented previously, which is remember that these people are coming from a point of ignorance. So let them, once you understand that, first seek to understand others before you seek to be understood. So once you understand what point of these people are coming from, then you can choose what kind of message to pass to them so that you're able to relate with them. So you're able to meet them where they are. Then the other thing is also try to look for mentors when you're starting this journey. Like for me, once I started this journey, I had a peer mentor, a person with a lived experience in mental health. So every time I used to do advocacy, I used to go back and ask him, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing right? They keep giving me a lot of encouragement. By virtue, that means that you're able to get from the experience what are the missteps they actually undertook, and also guide you in terms of advocacy. So having a mentor is very important once you are going through this journey. The other aspect is also looking for collaboration. Don't work alone. Build collaborations, because as much as you may start sharing your story or doing the advocacy, that means that you're able to reach out to people who are actually vulnerable, and they may reach out to you for help. So if yourself you're not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, in terms of if they need medical treatment, how do you handle that? So you need to have a place you're able to do a referral to that. So that means collaboration is very important. Then in terms of collaboration, it also helps you to delegate, because once you're doing advocacy, you may start getting burnout and you feel that you need to take a break from the advocacy. So when these things happen, how do you delegate some of the issues that you're not able to handle? You delegate it to others. So, and also prioritize your mental well-being. Set personal boundaries. As much as you may say, like for me, it's important for me to sleep at 10 and wake up at around 5, because that boosts my mental well-being. So that does not mean that if a person reaches to me at 11 p.m., I should take the phone call. No, it's about me first, then others came later. I'd rather deal with that phone call later on, as opposed to taking out of what I've set my personal boundaries from. So having those personal boundaries are very important. Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was very insightful. So we'll jump straight to Suzanne. How can young advocates integrate cultural knowledge into mental health solutions while working within global frameworks?
Yes, thank you for that question. I think I circle back to the keynote where the intersectionality between mental health and climate change and different things. I think the young people that I've had the privilege to work with in the United States and abroad, they are really tuned into intersectionality and identity and issues of mental health and climate change mental health and racism mental health and sexism. And they are so willing and excited to have these conversations and hold on to their identities as they bring in as they step into these conversations. And just to give you an example, some of our young people have hosted a podcast and webinar called Stigma Stories, and it's been hosted by young people in South Korea, young people in the United States, from India, who are sharing their stories. And there's such an awareness that it's very different in different countries, and there's different cultural issues at play and a lot of different things, but there's so many places where the young people can learn from each other. And when you get in these conversations globally, I'll just give you two quick examples. When I'm in Cambodia now for the month, but I was in India in February, and I had the incredible honor of going to visit a lot of social work schools in Kerala, the state of Kerala, and in Goa, and hosting workshops around stigma. And the conversations with the young people that we had of breakout groups and what can we do to address stigma? And it was so engaging and so thoughtful and exciting to hear their perspectives. And then you get a conversation with the American students, and they're sharing, well, this wouldn't work in our country, but this would, and how can we work together? So I think there's a lot of, like, the whole point of this conference today, there's a lot of really good energy when young people get together and share their ideas. And I've had a similar experience of working with students in the Arctic. And when you bring students from the Arctic, climate change is very different from climate change issues in the global south, where it's so hot. In the north, when the ice is melting and the impact that has on their communities, it's so real. And so bringing these young people to share their own stories, to learn from each other about what are the spaces where we intersect, what can we learn from each other. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but I know that I have just seen the amazing thoughtfulness that the young people have been putting into these conversations, and they know it, they're on it, they get it in ways that a lot of the older folks don't. And so I feel really hopeful and inspired by the young voices that are going to be making a big difference.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. Just a reminder that if anyone has questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. We will address them after the discussion is almost over. So a question for John. How do you navigate burnout and mental health challenges while advocating for others?
One is to actually every single time remember to prioritize your mental well-being. Your mental well-being should not come at the cost of helping others. It is once you do advocacy and it's starting impacting your mental well-being, then you should take a break from it, because it should not come at a cost of your mental health. That means that you should be able to be practicing a lot of self-care practices. And self-care does not mean that it's those one events that you take, a holiday or a vacation. Try to incorporate self-care in your everyday routine in what you do. Try to prioritize, like every day, have 30 minutes of things that you do to promote your well-being every single day. If you love taking walks, ensure that every single time or every single day you take out that nature walk that you see it is most important. If it's talking to your peer mentor, look for that peer mentor and have that conversation. Take that priorities of your mental well-being. And for those of us who have mental health conditions and actually doing advocacy, then building a very strong support system is very important to you, because sometimes you may find, let's say when you're doing advocacy online and you get a lot of people giving a lot of negative comments. So if you have built a lot of collaboration of other peer mentors or people who are doing advocacy in the mental space, you'll find those people will come to counter that narrative within your spaces, and that may not have a lesser impact on you because you feel now you have a community that is backing you up. And also, building a very strong support system enables you that when you feel that you're going down, you're able to reach out to them and they're able to support you and pull you back, because it is not that it's going to be, you'll also have ups and downs. So having that peer support system is very important. Then the other thing is also delegating of roles of what you're going through, of what you've encountered in the advocacy journey. If you find a case or you find an activity is so much overwhelming to you, try to delegate it to another person who's able to do it for you on your behalf, so that you have time to relax and regenerate your energy levels. Yeah.
Can I just, Connie, can I just piggyback again? Because I just wanted to say a little something extra what John was saying. There was a report that came out in the state that I live in, which is in Maine, the far northeast state in the United States, and it was about youth mattering. And I forget the exact percentage, but young people feel that they don't matter. And as we heard from the keynote and the having an adult ally, having that trusted ally, having a mentor, it could be a teacher, a parent, but that is so important. And I just want to echo that to be in this space, like what I'm doing, it's about hope and community and action, but it's also a lot of conversations around suicide loss and grief and mental health. And sometimes I would forget to take care of myself. And then it's that now I'm better, but is not something that we say self-care, and it really, really matters to take those few minutes to take those deep breaths and just write in your journal or take a walk or whatever it may be, whatever self-care looks to people. But it took me a while to really get it, that it does matter. And now I have my absolute candle, meditation, journal every morning. I just take that time to start my day. It's really important. Sorry, Connie, I just get excited when John's talking. I want to jump in.
Yeah, sure, no worries. So I'll go straight to someone had a question. Yes, so I'll start with Zach. Zach has a question for John. What advice would you give to others looking to use storytelling in their work?
One advice I'll have is actually, as much as we share our stories, we have two ways in which we share stories. When we share stories in terms of what you say, raw storytelling. And most often when you share raw storytelling, you may find us to be nervous, you may either lose control of your story. Most often you find when people say that they share their story in the media, and they say the media has actually distorted their story. The issue is not about the media distorting their story, it's actually you not having the skills to actually do to engage in the media interview skills. Then the other thing is also storytelling means that it's as much as it's a storytelling, it means that it's a public speaking. So you also need to have public speaking skills, because most of the time you find you're speaking to the audiences. Then the other way people that share their story is sharing their story in terms of, which is a canned storytelling, which is we find a person has over practiced their stories and they feel as if this story is a fiction of their story. So what it is best to have your story is what you call the true advocacy storytelling. And most often when you ask yourself, have you ever listened to a story and actually moved you to actually either donate or to take a specific action? Actually, it is not the story alone that made people to move an action. There are so many key messages of how you frame your story, how you give your story that moves people. So it is not your story alone that is able to move people to create impact. And most often when you share stories, we tend to leave our speakers in a point of empathy. Yes, I felt you. I felt what you've gone through. Yes, you felt what you've gone through. Then what next? Because your role as an advocate was to actually push people to take a specific action. So your role is also, as much as you share your story and people feel you need to move them to take a specific action. And that is what is your desire. So that means that we need to have a way that you to take and learn on how best to share your story in that line. And the other thing is that our story has also traumatic stories. Let's say you experience a story of a person your story is a suicidal story. Then you'll find that in your audience, another person may be going through suicide. So that means, but by the virtue you start sharing your personal stories of suicide, you may end up triggering your audiences. So that means that you as a storyteller, you have the sole responsibility of taking care of your audience in mental well-being. The storytelling is not just sharing your story, so you need to go a bit of lessons in terms of how to tell your stories the right way.
Okay, thank you. The next question from Zach, also to Suzanne. What advice do you have for others looking to use grassroots activism and storytelling to create impact?
Yeah, no, Zach, thank you for that question. Well, when you gave the introduction, I didn't come from mental health background. It's just thrown into it when we were faced with all this suicide loss. And we just had a passion to do something. And I think a lot of grassroots organizations start because they have something that is driving them to get involved and to do something and create something. And as John was saying earlier, I didn't come from nonprofit management. I didn't come from mental health background. I just needed to make change happen with my daughter because it was hard and it was dark and it was, we have to address this. And I think if you just believe in what you want to do, and is there something that's different that you bring that hasn't been done yet, and just create it. And like you said, just start small. Never in a million years. When my daughter and I started the Yellow Tulip Project, it was a Facebook page. And then it was one garden in a small city in the United States, in Portland, Maine, a place most people have never heard of. And yet now it's all over the United States. It's spreading globally because we just had a simple idea. So I think, like, even in this conversation today at this conference, there are other grassroots nonprofits that I would love to know more about. What do we do and what do you do and how can we work? So I think it starts by just having your why. What is your why? Why do you want to step into this? What do you care about and how do you get started? And I think it's not, maybe this isn't the best advice, but we didn't have a strategic vision when we started. We didn't have a big implementation plan. We just were angry and needing to make change. So I think when you care and you have passion, that's how you start. And then again, back to the collective piece, nobody can do this work by themselves. So we had a law firm that took us on pro bono. We had people in our community that loved what we were doing and just circled the wagons around us to get involved and help us propel us forward. So I think having your why, what do you care about? How do you get started? Building your team of people who are there to support you and prop you up and ask those questions like, what are you trying to do that's different? Or what is your mission? And but from what I've seen from these young people, from these activists that are caring, it's so inspiring because there's really, really great things happening. And I love these conversations so we can learn more about what we're all doing.
Thank you. So we'll go next to the next question. I'm thinking Yusuf, Mohammed's, and Edith's question are kind of circling on the same point. So it's for John. Is there any platform where people can share their stories? And Edith would want to know, if there is also a place where you can be trying the art of storytelling, either by narration or photo art.
For storytelling, for me, I've undergone what we call the living proof advocacy approach, which is based on evidence and best practices on how best to share your story, which is based on research. So I am a certified coach, and I train people on how best to tell their stories. That is one way I, as a certified coach, I do offer those services. Then, as a matter of the fact that I am a certified living proof advocacy coach, that tells you there's another, the consultant that trained me is known as living proof advocacy. So living proof advocacy trains you to become a certified coach to help others to share their stories and also learn how best to share your story. And they also have a book known as the Living Proof Advocacy. So you can also purchase the book and you actually read through. It has all those things that are necessary to help you learn on how best to share your story. Yeah, and also as an organization, we have what we call the Living Proof Advocacy Networks, where we train people to how best to share their stories. Then after that, they join our Speakers Bureau, where the speakers bureaus actually connects people. When a person is looking for a speaker in the mental health conference, they're able to negotiate a price and you participate as a speaker and you get paid, because by the virtue that you possess your story should also be compensated, because you're sharing your knowledge. So that's one way for us we are doing as an organization.
Okay. I'm gonna read Carly's entire text. I think you're both amazing. How do you balance your transparency and advocacy with looking after your own mental health? I noticed that many incorrectly assume that people who openly share and advocate are recovered or managing okay, when this is not always the reality. So how do you continue to push but look after yourself at the same time, especially when you may continually share experiences that can be triggering for you? What works well for you? Which is an amazing question.
Well, I would just sort of what I said prior of that piece of self-care and really prioritizing that part, because if you're a mental health activist, you're on and you're sharing stories and you are so actively involved in making a difference and sharing your lives in this passion and purpose. But if you forget to take care of yourself, that is so incredibly critical. And I agree that like all the young people in our momentum are part of the Yellow Tulip Project because they have their own mental health issues. And that doesn't mean that being involved, they suddenly are okay. They're not okay. But what our message is, it's okay to be not okay. And asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness. So I think the whole feeling part of a community, feeling less alone is like what we're moving towards. And really, it's so critical, especially now with so much social isolation, with so much I mean, I don't want to step into the whole place of social media and the role it plays on young people, but having those connections and feeling that you have a community of people to say, I need support, or I'm not okay. That's just so critical, I think.
Okay. I think Pat had a question for Suzanne. Great. Sometimes grassroots organizations get burdened to show impact reports, especially in mental health. This is so resource intensive. How do you navigate that?
Yeah. That is such a good question. And when we started, we were just a fierce band of change makers doing all this stuff, not chasing people around with surveys and forms. And we were missing, like we knew we were doing the good work. We're on the ground with getting our hands dirty and bringing the message, inspiring young people. But then you have to show your impact. And then in nonprofit world, you need to donors and grant writing and all that. So it's been a learning curve. That piece is really important. And we have been getting so much better at pre-surveys, post-surveys, this questions, that questions. So we have it now. We actually have our impact report every year, and we can show how many young people, how many gardens, how many photos, we can do that now. But it definitely was a learning curve. We started off like this mother-daughter duo. Then we had this merry band of young people. And now, if you look at the Yellow Tulip Project, like a child, like first we were little toddlers and babies, and then we were awkward teenagers, and now we're sort of, we're not 10 years old yet, and it's been definitely a learning process. But that piece about the impact, you can't not have, because everybody, how do you know you're making a difference? Well, I know because every young person, we have 700 young people involved, but we have to chase them around with their forms and their surveys. And so it took us a while to get that. And now we're getting better at doing that. And again, that's what I said earlier, when you have big national organizations that are so much more well established, and they have data teams and they have people who can help with the impact, that's a piece where it's definitely hard when you're a small team, but it's something that it's doable. You just have your surveys and you send them out. I'm bad myself. When people send me a survey, I'm like, I don't really have to fill that out, and I kind of forget, or I don't. But we're getting better, and we are able to show that impact, and it can't be ignored.
Okay, thank you, Suzanne. So I have a final question for either of the speakers. So I'm a young person who is advocating for mental health here in Kenya, and I'm also advocating it globally. So I'd like to understand that in a way I am kind of imposing global solutions or suggesting global solutions, and also trying to co-create interventions for the people that I'm aiming to serve. So my question is, how can I ensure that there is a balance between advocating for global frameworks to local frameworks, and making sure that there is a balance between both of them?
Was that question for John?
Hi, Eva.
John, do you want to take a stab at that first?
Sorry, the question. I've lost internet connection for some bit, so I've not gotten the question. So.
Okay, my question is, how can we ensure that there is a balance between advocating for global solutions and local solutions, ensuring that there is a balance between the two frameworks?
Okay, I can try to. So one way is most often is the local solutions are mostly localized in your grassroots level. So one way is then most of the interventions actually happen, or the most innovations are actually in the grassroots. So once you try to do in the global level, is also try to push those local innovations that you possess in your grassroots organizations or in your initiative, to push them to be adopted in the global level. And by that virtue, one, you're showing what you're doing in the grassroots level, and also giving a lot of credibility in your grassroots initiative, gaining international recognition, as you're allowing other people to take your innovation and tailor it to their context of implementation. Yeah.
Yeah, I would just add that, there's the expression, think globally, act locally. I think first, just fine tuning what you want to do in your backyard. What is the thing that you want to get involved with to make a difference in your community? And then when that is sort of figured out, then through these conversations, who else aligns with what you're trying to do? And then you launch into these global places where other people, oh, I love what you're doing, I want to get involved, or how can we collaborate? And just to give you an example, last year, I left the Yellow Tour Project as executive director. I stepped down. I went back to graduate school in Edinburgh, University of Edinburgh, and did a master's degree in global mental health and society. And I wanted to see if our nonprofit, our message of hope and community and storytelling and arts, is that unique to the United States, or how would that look in a global context? And that was sort of my North Star of why I wanted to look at stigma across cultures. And it was so amazing for me to see my classmates from Saudi Arabia, Palestine, Malaysia, India, China, Japan, all over the world, Canada, Australia. And these conversations were people have their unique perspectives, but stigma is universal. And coming up with collective ways to address this issue was just so empowering for me. And that's why I'm really excited about these conversations I've been having in India and Cambodia with you today, because we all have different perspectives and things to bring. And the more we know, and sometimes people just talk the talk, but don't walk the walk. And I think walking the walk is really important, and really actually having a follow-up of, okay, what is everybody doing? And how can we do more together? So that's something I am really passionate about, is finding more ways for intersecting and collaborating.
Sure. Thank you so much for your insight. So before we wrap up, I'd love to hear from each one of you. After listening to each other's work and insights, is there anything that resonated with you or that you'd like to share? Perhaps a word of encouragement, appreciation, or a key takeaway from what you've heard today.
On my end, I feel what she's doing, actually, there's a connection in what we do in terms of the way she's doing art and storytelling. Actually, I was intrigued about the way the art with the scan and people are able to listen to the story. I feel that is very innovative and unique. Actually, that has blown my mind, actually. And it's something I would like to learn more from how she's doing it, and also try to see if we can able to collaborate and also localize it in my context. Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, John. And yes, 100%. I'd love to continue these conversations. And for me, in the end of the day, it really does boil down to storytelling. When you share that, you share your story. That's how we got started, because my daughter shared her story. And the ripple effect it has in touching people's lives is way more powerful than a PowerPoint presentation, way more powerful than a Lancet report document. It's so real, it's so honest. So John, what you're doing is just so needed and fantastic, and really a privilege to share this space with you today.
Okay, thank you so much. So as we come to the end of this session, I want to sincerely thank our panelists for sharing their knowledge, experience, and insights. Your work and dedication to mental health advocacy is truly inspiring. And I also want to thank our audience for being part of this important conversation. We hope today's discussion has sparked new ideas and fostered connections and encouraged meaningful action. Thank you. So I'll hand it over back to Wariimi.
Sorry, I was getting a call. Thank you so much, Constance, Suzanne, John. That was really a powerful session. Thank you for emphasizing on the importance of storytelling. Definitely storytelling does create a huge impact. As John said, it's a persuasive form of communication which can build trust and social connections. Susan, I also just wanted to commend you for doing this amazing work with your family, with your daughter. You are touching lives out there, but you're also changing lives and bringing a difference to your family and to future generations within your family. So great stuff on that. Now, Susan, I just had one quick question for you. You encouraged us, or you encouraged the youth to collaborate with bigger organizations. My question is, how do people get into these bigger organizations? Because one, people with lived experience are really not yet recognized as people who can create an impact. People still look at, do you have papers? Do you have a degree? Do you have all that? And so there's a lived experience. And then also for the young people, in terms of age, people will look at them like, you're too young, what do you know? So how can these young people actually get into collaborating with these big organizations?
Well, speaking from my own experience with the Yellow Tulip Project, if you go to our website, it's all action, action, action. It says, are you a young person? Are you a community member? Are you an educator? And if you're a young person, it's get involved, hear what you do, become an ambassador, fill out our form. And you can either become part of our leadership team and jump in full, or just follow us on Instagram and social media and read our blog, but it's a place. I really do believe that young people feel that their voices matter and they feel that they are being heard and making a difference. So I think just, and again, I wasn't sure, does this apply to young people, let's say in India? And yet the conversations I had with mental health experts in India and at social work schools, I think there's so much that young people there had so many creative, thoughtful ideas. So I think that, I guess I'm running around a little bit, but I think your question is what's the best way to get involved, or how do they, I think I lost the thread of your question, but I know that just the collaboration that I'm having with mental health organizations in India and bringing their conversations in, and with the Arctics, like young people are ready to have these conversations, and they're loving these opportunities to share conversations with each other, and to learn from each other and realize that there's a space where they can make a difference.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Suzanne. Then I also have a question for John. This is kind of a bit personal and also just getting to understand. How do you deal with people who tell you that, you know, when you keep saying that I suffer from depression, when you keep putting posts, when you keep doing social media, I mean, when you keep doing media interviews and you're talking about your mental health, it means that you're claiming it. It means that you're owning it. It means that, you know, so if you keep doing that, it means that you're not going to get better. And then also and also comments like you're focusing on your past. Because like last week, I put up a post on my Instagram page and I was giving my story on how by the time I was being diagnosed with depression and anxiety, I was driving a 4x4. And then, okay, yeah, so by the time I was being diagnosed, I was driving a 4x4. And now because of anxiety, unfortunately, I have to take what we call bodabodas in Kenya. Bodabodas are motorbikes that are used as public means, which is not an ideal thing. And, you know, that is kind of like a downgrade. So I was sharing that and I told people, take care of your mental health because this can happen to you. You can stop driving, you can stop what. But I got some comments of you're holding too much onto the past and you need to move on. So how do you deal with such issues or such comments from people?
Me, I'll say just ignore the comments, because there's one thing that people don't understand in terms of storytelling is that apart from what you're doing in terms of sharing your story to create change, it's also therapeutic when you're sharing your story. For me, in my story, I've undergone a lot of human rights violation in a mental institution. When I share my story, it tends to give me a sense of healing that it's very different from the sense of healing that I'll get from a psychiatrist, from a psychologist, from peer support. There's a sense of healing that comes from it. It's very unexplainable, and I think this is mostly resonated to a lot of people. And people don't understand that also that part of storytelling is also a way of you healing. And because they don't understand that aspect, they just ignore and focus on what it is doing to you at your personal level.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much. So thank you again, Connie, Susan, John. We've definitely learned a lot. Thank you so much. And also for the attendees, thank you so much for being here. This event would not be a success if you were not here. So we truly appreciate your presence. So what we're going to do is that we are going to go for a 10-minute break, go stretch, get a cup of coffee, make maybe some juice, whatever it is, just stress. And then I'll come back ready for, okay, so I'm being told that we are out of time. So maybe we can just make it 5 minutes. It's 10:51 a.m. in Kenya right now. So that means it will, so 10:52. So that means it will be, I'm confused. Let's take it to 11. Yeah, let's give it 8 minutes. So let's take it to 11 a.m., convert it to your time. So just stretch, do what you need to do, and then we'll be back in the next 8 minutes. Thank you. I hope that you have all had a very enlightening session. I know I did. I was in mental health and education. And let me tell you, Deborah did an amazing job, and I really hope the rest of the sessions were as enlightening and as empowering as we had. So I would like to introduce the last session. This will be our last session for the day. Again, I'd like to thank you for being here with us today. So in today's, the last session, we'll have Sandra taking us through a reflection session. So this part of the program now, the Global Mental Health Peer Network staff are the ones who are going to be taking us through this session. So the first staff we have is...
Wariimi, sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
Can you just give it a second? Some people are joining back from the breakout rooms.
Okay. And in fact, when I was supposed to do a breathing exercises, I'd forgotten. So you let me know once they're all back?
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And 1 minute, let me just turn off my camera to check something.
How were the other workshops? I really wanted to be part of the others as well. How did the one on harm reduction and perinatal mental health go?
Well, I can say the one with Yana and the peri-mental health went really amazing. It was a really, really great session. So thoroughly enjoyed that. Thank you. Thanks, Yana.
Lovely.
Thanks, Claudia. I think there was just a short technical gap there. Wariimi, I can confirm everybody's back in the main session, so you can continue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sandra. Yes, so before we go into the reflection session, I would like to take us through a mindfulness or a relaxation technique. In the beginning, I mentioned that I struggle with severe depression and anxiety disorder. And the most interesting thing is I find like for the first 5 years, the depression was the major thing. And then the next 5 years, the anxiety has been the major thing. So I've really had to learn a lot of coping strategies. And the first one is breathing exercises. And this is the 4-7-8 technique. So this technique can help calm your heart rate. It can slow down your breathing as well and give you a calming technique. So I'd like you all to sit up on your seat, sit up straight, feet firmly on the ground. You can place your hands on your thighs or on your knees. And then we are going to breathe in for 4 seconds through our nose. Then you'll hold for 7 seconds. And then you will exhale through your mouth, counting 8 seconds. So it is inhale, so you count 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, count 7, and then exhale with 8. So let's begin. Inhale with your nose, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Slow exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we can do that one last time. So deep inhale with your nose. Make sure you're inhaling deeply. Make sure you're taking in enough air. So let's start. Inhale deeply on 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 7 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then exhale slowly with your mouth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Thank you. So you can repeat that activity as many times as you would like until you start feeling calm or until you start getting the effect that you need. Sometimes you'll find that maybe if you're in a panic, especially say you're in an anxiety attack or you're in the panic attack, sometimes doing this activity can make you dizzy, but then just keep at it at your own pace. You can pause, then start inhaling again, then pause, and eventually the dizziness will go down, and then you start feeling the calm. If it's before, maybe you have a talk, maybe you're at your desk, you're feeling overwhelmed, maybe you're at a party and you are experiencing some social anxiety or feeling uncomfortable, just go to a quiet place. You can go to the loo, wherever it is, and just do that breathing exercise, and it will definitely help you. So moving on, as I mentioned, the next session will be by our very amazing GMHPN staff. And to take us through the first session, we'll have Sandra Ferreira to take us through a reflection session. And I'm telling you, my dear attendees, some leaders inspire through words, others through action, but Sandra does both. With over 20 years in education and mental health advocacy, she has dedicated her life to creating meaningful change. Diagnosed with bipolar 1 in 2005, you are quite the warrior. Those are 20 years, quite the warrior. She turned her journey into a global mission, advocating for mental health support and policies. As global manager for global mental health peer networks, Sandra leads key initiatives like P2P mentorship program, which I'm actually a part of, Youth Agents for Change, and peer support, a program called Bench Warmers, all focused on empowerment, education, and accessibility. She also plays an active role in international research, policy discussions, and advocacy and advisory boards dedicated to mental health and human rights. Passionate about alternatives to coercion in mental health care, Sandra pushes for more compassionate, right-based approaches. She lives by Benjamin Disraeli's words, "The greatest good you can do for another is not just to share your riches, but to reveal to him his own." That is very, very, very powerful. And when she's not advocating, she finds joy in her fur babies, one of which she named Zola after the antidepressant Zoloft. And Zola has been the best therapy she had for the past 10 years. After Sandra, we will have our Deputy CEO, Claudia Sartor, a powerhouse in global mental health advocacy, and the Deputy CEO of GMHPN, who will take us through the steps we should take after this event. It should not end after you click leave meeting. You should continue with the work. Based in Johannesburg, South Africa, Claudia has dedicated her career to championing holistic wellness, recovery, and workplace mental health. Her expertise extends beyond advocacy. She's a leader in integrating lived experience into global mental health research and policy, ensuring that those with first-hand experience shape the future of mental health. At GMHPN, Claudia leads the Experts by Experience Consultancy Services Unit, which brings together individuals with lived experience to provide insights and services tailored to diverse contexts. She is also an esteemed guest lecturer, sharing her knowledge with universities across the world. In addition to Claudia's contribution to academic and professional publications, including the Lancet Psychiatry, Cambridge Prisms, PJ Psych Bulletin, and other respectable platforms have reinforced the value of lived experience in mental health systems, policy development, and service delivery. Her impact is undeniable, and her dedication to amplifying the voices of lived experience continues to shape the global mental health landscape. And then lastly, we will have our dear Zach to give a reflection and vision for the future GMHPN has. Some people talk about mental health, but Zach lives it. advocates for it, and innovates around it. As a dedicated member for global mental health peer networks, Zach is passionate about amplifying the voices of those who with lived experience and driving meaningful change in the mental health space. But here is where it gets even more interesting. Zach is not just an advocate, he's also a gamer with a mission. For him, video games are more than just entertainment. They have been a source of joy, connection, and resilience throughout his mental health journey. He firmly believes that gaming has the power to build communities, tell powerful stories, and support mental well-being in ways most people would not expect. Whether he's connecting, advocating, or exploring creative approaches to mental health, Zach brings passion, insight, and a fresh perspective to the conversation. So without further ado, I will open it up to Sandra, after which Claudia will take over, and then Zach. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thanks, Wariimi. Sure. Well, after that breathing exercise, I think I'm ready, but it made my heart go faster as well. But anyway, that was a nice little exercise in there. So I'm cognizant of time, so I'm going to share my reflections in a bit of insight, but also to allow the team to have their time as well. Firstly, to Dr. Harshita, what an incredible, genuine, powerful presentation you shared with us. It was really moving. I'm unsure as to if you are still on this call, but such genuine and authenticity came through so strongly. A lot of what you spoke about resonated with me so very much. Even when you refer to your mom, I have a very similar relationship. So it was really beautiful. And obviously, you know, it takes a lot of courage to share stories or experiences, as we like to call them. And John as well, there were some really powerful words that came through, and bringing in the human factor, you know, in policy and practice and stuff is so important. That's why lived experience engagement is fundamental to change within mental health. Suzanne, one of the things I picked up from your conversation, which I really liked, was I have depression, but depression doesn't have me. And I think that speaks directly to how I view my condition, where I see it as a part of me. It's not all of me. And it's just something that I need to navigate. But like I say, just general across the board, the feeling is the same. You know, there's issues of stigma, especially from an African perspective, that persist. And I mean, evidence supports that, you know, the best way to eliminate stigma is to involve people with lived experience. Charlene was part of the Lancet Commission. I think Claudia was as well. These are important considerations, and it's not just considerations, it's based on fact. Community engagement and community and grassroots advocacy is so important in terms of impact. Wariimi did mention that I'm on a few advisory boards, and I see it across those boards that the future is community care and culturally sensitive advocacy, and it's really, really important, and even more so engaging the youth. I find it fundamental. I come from a teaching background, and you know, from a learner-centered perspective, it's the same when it comes to mental health. We advocate a lot around non-paternalistic practices. And, you know, we're here to guide and support each other, not to dictate what the next generation should believe or advocate for. Suzanne also mentioned words such as intersectionality. It's so important to consider these things and understand it from the youth's perspective. Harshita touched on climate change and mental health. It's an incredibly important area for the youth, and you know, we need to listen to it. We do live in a world where paternalistic structures are difficult to navigate in certain instances, especially if we look at policy and governments and such. But I'm a big advocate for the Convention of Rights of Persons with Disabilities. I have a very strong interest in human rights. And although that is a call and has been ratified by multiple countries globally, it is our responsibility as individuals, as communities, as organizations to take on those principles as well. As academics, researchers, everybody who's involved in mental health has the responsibility to look at that document, in my view, and take that on in your own space. Understand that human rights apply, and it's not just mental health rights. It's how we treat each other. And Harshita also spoke a lot about compassion, about empathy. It's fundamental to existence, and the way that we approach each other and care for each other. So yeah, look, I wouldn't be able to speak like the way I'm speaking if it wasn't for this network, for the GMHP. And what Charlene has created is a support structure that is unparalleled. It's a community of safety. It's a community of advancement, of empowerment, of education, you know, of family. Sometimes families also have the odd little thing, but it doesn't matter. To the core, it's a bloodline. And it's somewhere we really feel safe, and you know, where our voices can expand. So as a final call within your own spaces, whatever that may mean within your organizations, remember it's a supportive role. And as Wariimi mentioned, my favorite quote is the greatest good someone can do for another is not just share your riches, but to reveal to them their own. I think it's so important. And in the best way possible, we do that. I'm not sure how long I've spoken for, but I'm gonna wrap it there. Claudia's gonna discuss some important things within our EBE structures, followed by Charlene, and then obviously to end with Zach. These people have been my go-to people for a long time, so I have a lot of support for them as well as individuals, and obviously within our organization. Just a quick mention to everybody who was part of the GMHPN. Path and Connie organized this event. They are in their early 20s to middle 20s kind of thing. It is an incredible thing to put together and to initiate. So I wanted to give a big shout out to Path Sharma and to Constance Mabia. Thank you for all your work that you have put into this. To Wariimi, amazing MC, you held the room so beautifully as well. And then to our workshop facilitators, also such important people and individuals in my life, to Elsa, to Deborah, and to Jana. Thank you for making the time and creating the workshop space. And that's me. I'll hand over to Claudia. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Okay, so I'm going to try and see if I can get my screen shared, so just bear with me. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yep, it's visible.
Cool. Is it big enough?
Okay. Maybe just use the full screen button. Bottom right, yeah.
Cool. Okay, so I'm not going to introduce myself. Okay, so I'm just going to go a little bit sort of before going into the future and what we should be looking at, taking just a little bit of a step back and looking at what's happening right now. So we know that the practice is including people with lived experience in mental health related initiatives, endeavors, policy changes, reform, advocacy, etc. We also know that that's not just practice but it's also backed up by international human rights documents, reports. So we're kind of holding ourselves accountable in that regard, and we also have a support that comes from the legal structure in order for us to do that, right? So there should be no reason why people with lived experience don't feel like they shouldn't get involved in mental health related matters. So like Sandra had mentioned, the UNCRPD, it recognizes the value of people with lived experience, their full participation. And what it does is essentially, if we do it right and in the correct way, meaningfully and authentically, what it does is enhances a sense of belonging. But it also takes it a step further and says, if experts by experience are involved in service delivery and innovations, then it also means that they're bringing something to society, socioeconomically, just professionally. So there's so much more that comes to it than sharing our story. And this is something I wanted to touch base on as well in terms of why we do what we do and what that entails. So taking that step back there's a lot of obstacles when it comes to including people with lived experience, right? So I've broken it down into 3 sort of separate pillars. The first is the obvious, which is stigma and discrimination. And that's about people having the misperception of us being able to contribute because of our mental health condition, that we're not able to make decisions. So therefore we can't participate in decision-making processes. So a lot of the time, I would say probably in the last 2-3 years is where it was very paternalistic. There was a lot of power imbalances. There is a slight shift, but the slight shift in it being better is also because of advocacy initiatives. And because we get involved a lot with stakeholders where we show the alternative to that. So how do you include people with lived experience in the right way that it avoids this tokenistic approach? So that goes into the second pillar, which is people don't know, stakeholders, organizations don't know how to involve lived experience meaningfully and authentically. They don't know what that means. They don't know how to approach, and it's really sometimes just simple things about reaching out to, say, lived experience organizations such as ourselves and saying, okay, we have this project, how do we go about it? And we then assist in that regard. Then the third thing, which is very important and being advocated for a lot lately, is the inclusion of lived experience, but for paid work, for equal work, right? So we take just as much time in preparing, reading, going through documents, reviewing, and then attending sessions and providing recommendations and inputs, just like any other technical expert would. So we should be valued for that same amount of time and prep that we do, just like any other technical expert. So Charlene will delve a little bit more into that, but from the start of the network, it was initially a platform where we were bringing people together with lived experience, where they could share their thoughts, experiences, and potentially recommendations. And as the years went by, we began advocating for remuneration, compensating fairly when it comes to lived experience inclusion. And then also what lived experience inclusion looks like and what the best practice should be. So what we did is we came up with the Expert by Experience consultancy services, which is our own little unique unit, not really much out there like this. And it's a unit we created that really drives impact and innovation. It's ideally a very operational requirement where we were like thinking that this should actually become a profession where people are consultants and experts in providing services to different stakeholders. So when we created this unit, what we do is we involve our members, so our country leaders from all across the world, to take part in the delivery of a range of services to various stakeholders and within various sectors. So we're going, so we work with international agencies like WHO, we work with a lot of universities and academic research organizations, funders as well. So we're now sitting on the board of funders to help them decide on who they could potentially fund, but bringing in a lived experience perspective as well, which is great. Nonprofits, NGOs, and corporates. So we have packages, we call them our EBE packages, which touches on a range of services, and that is available on our website. It is currently being updated, but the ones that we currently have is on the website should you want to have a look at that. And the importance of this is this particular unit, and what the network currently stands for is narratives are super important, and it's important to explain and share your journey and your experience. But we want to take it a step further, and we want to say, yes, you had this experience, but what happened in that experience that could be improved upon? What worked and what didn't? That could relate to the mental health care you received. That could relate to just the hospitalization. That could relate to potentially a not so great relationship with your therapist or your psychiatrist. So therefore, taking the narratives and transforming it into recommendations in an advisory and a consultancy capacity. And that's taking advocacy to the next level, right? Because then we're able to inform policies, we're better able to provide input into research and interventions that are going to affect people that are directly affected by these things that organizations are working on. Then in particular, the way forward and what we're thinking is youth is just an absolute, it's crucial to normalizing conversations about mental health, right? Youth involvement. And that's not to say that those of us that are older can't have a say anymore. It's just that we were youth too, so we can still bring in knowledge and give our insights. But the youth is a new generation with new ideas. And I think now, if I look back when I initially started my advocacy, I didn't have just a platform ready, available, and let's go, right? So here the youth has now more opportunities, more platforms, and rightfully so, they should be using those platforms and making it easier for them to talk to peers. So thereby we seeking help without fear of judgment. That inevitably kind of helps early intervention and prevention. So we'll have less struggles or even reducing long-term struggles. Then we've got youth-led initiatives, which are great. So advocacy can take on a new turn. It can become more creative, more accessible, relatable, and also looking at the actual needs of the people affected by services or interventions, rather than being interventions that are designed by adults, but not necessarily fitting for the youth. So it's understanding those experiences. So, you know, having the conversation amongst youth, with youth, for youth, very important. That will then drive empowerment and leadership. And then we also have the youth being powerhouses when it comes to digital advances and using of social media platforms for awareness. And I think there's just so much that youth can do, and we do have a platform for that. And we just hope, as we've seen today, that there is a platform, and if you make use of it, it can be really, really beneficial, not only to yourself, but to others. Then just quickly on our website, if you're looking at what it means to meaningfully and authentically involve people with lived experience, we can have a look at these. It is on our publications tab, so you can have a look at that. I will now hand over to Charlene. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. So Claudia kind of gave you the background of where we're coming from in terms of service delivery, and really rather looking at people with lived experience as consultants, as experts by experience. I know some of the issues that Claudia highlighted, like stigma and all of that. What we often found at one point was people didn't want to involve lived experience because I think you need ethical approval. So I think that's why we're not like subjects of research or subjects of something anymore. We're experts by experience. And I think that distinction is need to be made very clear. So moving a bit further, and Claudia also mentioned that stakeholders kind of had, although they were very eager to include or still eager to include, they don't often know how. And they don't often match the experiential value with the monetary value. So I'm just going to share my screen quickly. Yeah. Okay, it's just a PDF document. But we developed last year, January, we got funding from Kokoro and Vittel Foundation to develop a remuneration framework for lived experience expertise. And with that, we also developed an assessment toolkit, self-assessment toolkit, for stakeholders to kind of look at how meaningfully and authentically they do include, and how effective their systems are including lived experience. I'm not going to go, you go, I don't know, Zach, but I can always put the link in on the website. We do have a page. Oh, wait, I actually do. Okay, but I'll do this just now. Anyhow, I just briefly want to take you, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but the gist of this remuneration framework, what we found is there's very differences when it comes to payment of lived experience expertise. We found a lot of the times they give you a voucher or something. I mean, it's like, let's say a voucher for whatever. That's not, it's almost like it's insulting. Some would give you like $10 or, and then your bank charges exceed that. There was huge discrepancies in the amounts being paid. So clearly the value wasn't understood correctly. So we worked with health economists to try and come to more fair and equitable remuneration amounts. But it was actually very difficult because we tried to kind of compare experts by experience consultative roles with technical consultants in the fields out there. But because this industry is very competitive, people do not disclose those amounts. So we took a little bit of a different route. We went across and gathered information from people with lived experience and organizations who include lived experience to see what do they currently pay. And then we went and we also looked at kind of the cost to that. Sometimes people don't consider the kind of your overheads, your data that you spend, all those things that people don't think of. So how do I move this thing? Sorry. There we go. Okay, I'm not going to go. I just want to show you how the toolkit looks like. So first of all, we based this remuneration framework because in the real world, in different positions or occupations, you have different degrees of people. Let's say someone in an entry level will get a different salary amount or fee than someone who's been there for 10 years and got a lot more experience. So first of all, we developed this expertise self-assessment tool where people with lived experience can kind of assess where they lie in what level of expertise. And at the bottom, it also gives you the descriptions. And then we went into taking those levels of expertise. Sorry, it's very small. But to look at the different roles that people with lived experience play or experts by experience, and then look at fair amount. Now, if you look, let's say, for example, these are rates per hour, but we say you have to consider a minimum of 2 hours. I'm sure you know, if you do an engagement, there's pre-reading and all that, there's preparations. And if you're just fall into a 1 hour consultation, that's not going to be meaningful. That's not going to be authentic. That will be tokenistic because there's no way you're going to do it in that hour because you won't, in any event, have had given people the opportunity to familiarize themselves for what they contribute their expertise to. So there's different things, elements of involvement. Okay, and then we developed the self-assessment tools aimed at stakeholders. So is the one tool is for stakeholders specifically to kind of rate themselves in terms of how they included people with lived experience. And we looked at every area from the recruitment process. Did they provide orientation and empowerment? Was the communication effective? All those are important elements. Were there support and resources available? Were any of the risks managed? And then the stakeholder can score themselves to see where exactly they fit into the effectiveness of including lived experience. Then there's a similar questionnaire for people with lived experience who were involved in this specific stakeholder project or organization. They kind of respond to similar questions and also rate themselves. That way you can see what the stakeholders say about how they include lived experience, but also from the lived experience people themselves being involved. Now, our whole idea of this, I'm just going to stop sharing it, is eventually this is then a service package that we provide to stakeholders. We don't just leave them there. We do have a more in-depth assessment tool. That's a service, and then we will provide stakeholders with actionable recommendations on how they can improve in all the areas. And I think that is important going forward. And I think it's also a nice way if we set a tone going forward for stakeholders that it's kind of a mental, how can I say, change, a shift. People need to start thinking in this way, that people with lived experience are experts, they're consultants, like any other employee or any other consultant providing their expertise, and also need to be remunerated for that expertise. Yeah, so that is kind of from my side. I'm going to post the link to the website where you can actually download that thing, the toolkit and framework. And yeah, please do go ahead and kind of promote it among your networks so that people can start using it. And I must also say it's kind of an evolving thing. So this is not set in stone. So we will keep reviewing it as well because things keep changing. But yeah, thank you so much from my side. And yeah, it was really been a lovely conference. And thank you so much to everyone. And I'll hand over to Zach.
Thank you so much, Charlene. Well, I want to thank everyone for being part of this incredible discussion today. We started this conference with a warm welcome from Wariimi, our MC, who has kept us engaged and energized throughout the session. So thank you so much, Wariimi. Also, a big special out to Charlene, CEO of the Peer Network, who helped setting the stage for the importance of our youth-driven solutions, bridging grassroots advocacy and global mental health conference. So we've been privileged to hear from the incredible voices today. Dr. Harshita Umesh kicked things off with an inspiring keynote on youth engagement in global mental health, reminding us that young people are not just the future, but the present force in shaping mental health discourse. A big thank you to Taylor as well for assisting. Constance expertly led our panel discussion on grassroots youth engagement movements, local to global, where we explored powerful real-world initiatives with insights from John Mwangi from Kenya, who shared insights on community-driven mental health responses. And your storytelling brought powerful insights and depth to the discussion. Suzanne Fox, the Yellow Tip Project from America, who co-founded this initiative alongside her daughter, Julia, in 2016, showed us the impact of hope, grassroots activism, and once again, storytelling and how big it is in breaking the stigma around youth mental health. Then we moved on into the series of the hands-on workshops where we saw practical solutions in action. The first is Yana, Mother Hope from Indonesia, took us through the power of storytelling in perinatal mental health advocacy, demonstrating how lived experience can drive awareness and systematic change from maternal mental health. Deborah, Mental Health Transformation Organization from Nigeria, explored education and mental health, equipping youth with tools to empower themselves and others for a healthier future. Not for last, ALSA Therapy from South Africa brought us a trauma-informed perspective to addiction, challenging us to rethink traditional approaches and recognize the deeper connections between trauma and substance use. You were great, Elsa. Each of these discussions reinforced a powerful truth. Real change starts with real people at the grassroots level. A big thank you to Claudia, Constance, and Path for assisting us with the workshops, and to Marceline as well. Tech issues are just a way of us keeping us humble. We've all had issues, so don't worry. As we wrap up today, I do want to take a moment to reflect on the incredible insights gained today, A special thank you to you, Sandra, for leading the reflection on our shared commitments and takeaways from this session. What today has shown us is that youth engagement isn't just about being part of the conversation, it's about leading it. We've seen how young advocates are developing innovative solutions, mobilizing communities, and influencing global conversations on mental health. At the GMHPN, the peer network, we want to turn these conversations into action. That's where Claudia and Charlene guided us towards practical and actionable steps that can help us carry this momentum forward beyond today. So, where do we go from there? So this is just the beginning. First, sustaining the momentum. Today's conference is a stepping stone. The conversations we've had must continue, ensuring that youth-led mental health advocacy remains a priority at local, national, and global levels. 2, strengthening your youth leadership. We need to build more spaces where young advocates can lead, collaborate, and influence policies and programs that shape global mental health. Creating structured platforms for youth engagement will ensure that lived experience continues to drive real change. The expanding collaborations, partnerships between grassroots movements, policymakers, researchers, and global organizations will be essential in scaling up the impact of youth-driven mental health initiatives. Building strong networks will help sustain and amplify the work we are doing. This is how we move forward by taking action, staying connected, and continue to uplift and empower the voice that drive change. Let's build on today's energy and commitment and turn it into a lasting impact. Before we close, I do want to express my deepest gratitude to all the speakers, the panelists, the workshop facilitators for their wisdom, lived experience, and their dedication to mental health advocacy. To the whole Global Mental Health Peer Network team, including those behind the scenes, for making this conference possible. Thank you. And of course, to each and every one of you for showing up, sharing your voices, and committing to change. A huge big thank you to Path and Constance for organizing this conference. This is the first time we are doing something like this, and I truly, truly appreciate everyone who made it happen. This is how progress happens, through conversation, collaboration, collective action. What we will do next will shape the future of youth-led mental health advocacy. That's all on my side, but I want to say thank you all, and let's keep moving forward together. That's all on my side.
Thank you so much, Zach, for that. Thank you, Claudia. Thank you, Charlene, Sandra, the team behind this. Amazing, amazing, amazing. The speakers, amazing. And to you attendees, thank you so much for being here. I would like to teach you how we clap during functions in Kenya. So it is a Kiswahili clap. So you say moja. So moja is number 1. So you say moja, then you do mbili, that means 2. Then you clap 3 times. So anytime I say something, you clap, and then the last one is open, then close. So let's, please unmute, guys. Unmute. I want to hear all the claps. I want to hear the Kenyan clap. Okay, let's start. Moja. Really? Tatu.
Love it.
Moja.
I need to screenshot this. Everybody stay like this so I can screenshot and pretend.
I'll quickly do.
Okay.
Go for it.
Okay.
Thank you, guys. That brings us to the end of. Oh, you want to do a screenshot, Claudia?
Yes. So Charlene will also do the first one. So we do the 1, 2, 3. Then we can get that screenshot with all our hands.
Wait.
Okay, so I start it again.
Okay. Yes, please. Just a
Okay, so
moment.
just remember you clap 3 times every time I say something.
Okay, go.
Okay, moja, mbili, tatu, funga, fungua. Yes, that
Love
is
it. Good job.
Yeah. So thank you guys. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Remember what we've learned here. Take it back to your country, in your at grassroots level, national level, wherever it is. And we hope some of you will get to join your global mental health peer networks. It's really, really an amazing platform. So take care, guys. Have a lovely rest of your Saturday.
Thank you, guys.